Nick Habich, welcome to the show, my friend.
What's up, Batman? How you doing?
I'm good, man. How you doing this morning?
I'm good. I'm good. I just got out of an ice bath, so I'm feeling nice and awake.
Oh man, yeah, how often do you do that?
I bought an off-brand that I'm not gonna call out publicly on a podcast. So it took like 2 months to get here, but I've had it officially set up for about 3 weeks now, and I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm doing it just
Okay,
about
do
every
you
day.
do you have the standing kind or do you have to lie down?
No, I can fit in it. Like you and I are both pretty tall guys, so I was really concerned about getting any of the brands that weren't spacious, you know.
Like
But
the
this one,
barrel?
yeah, yeah. And I don't have very good squat mobility, so I didn't want to have to do like a deep squat, you know. Now this one I can sit in, I can get not fully laid out, but I can get under pretty easily. So
Nice. Yeah, we
yeah.
have some like really big I believe they're just like they're like horse troughs at the gym that we
Mhm.
someone found for us in three different sizes at Home Depot on sale that we'll use during the summer months. But they're quite a pain to kind of like fill and maintain at the facility. I had looked into like the barrel that you can buy for your house that has like the little steps that get up into it. But for me, the thought of contorting my 6'4" frame into this like barrel, I'm like something about this just is not going to work out.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. And I live in Florida, so I set up an ice bath probably 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, something like that, a while ago. And it took me, or it was almost $200 worth of ice I had to get, plus a 2 hour setup. I was like, okay, you've sold me. I get it.
Yeah. So wait, does yours automatically cool and heat?
Yep, I have a chiller, so it sits at 10 degrees Celsius all the time.
Oh, fantastic. Now, do you
Yeah.
have to put anything in the water, like chlorine or anything to keep?
Yeah, I learned that the hard way because I wasn't putting anything in it. And and I got in one time and I put my foot down and I slipped. I fell because there was like a nice little jelly at the bottom.
Oh, great. Little toe jam.
Yeah, so
Oh, that's funny.
got to put like a little floater with like a cleaning solution in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I had that experience. I in moving to my new house a few years back, we had a pool and it's beautiful and like the previous owners had spent all sorts of money to put this thing in and I was excited and then I realized really quickly that this is a job, and like
Yeah.
it's not cool if it's green, you know.
Yep.
It's not cool then. Oh man. Well, you're probably like the fourth or fifth guest that regularly now jumps into ice baths. Do you see this as something that is going to continue on, or you think it'll be a fad?
I think just like anything, it'll be a fad for the most part, you know. But that, I mean, I'm in this, I'm in the corner of like if a placebo works, it works, right? If something makes you, I'm not necessarily saying ice baths are a placebo, but just in general, like even if they don't
Yeah.
have the world changing effects that some people will imply they have, if they make you feel better and it takes you 4 minutes, like what's wrong with that, you know?
Yeah, I will say I spent a couple months doing cold showers in the morning, and it was mainly because when my daughter was first born, it was like the easiest way to get myself up and moving
Hmm.
that didn't involve 600 milligrams of caffeine. When you're getting 3 hours of sleep at night, like you need something to put some pep in your step, and if nothing else, you're up. Like at 5 in the morning, if you're taking a cold shower for 3 minutes or you're hopping in an ice bath, like you don't want to go back to bed. You are up.
Yeah, I feel very awake afterwards. That's for sure. And I've tried to do the cold showers here. When I lived in upstate New York, when I was in the army, I would do that. But here in Florida, the water doesn't get cold, so you could put it as cold as it goes. It's like warm water anyway, you
Yeah,
know.
that's funny. So in Florida, you own Shark Bite Fitness in Southwest Florida, and you have two locations, correct?
Yep, I do. In Cape Coral and in Fort Myers are two cities that are right next to each other down here.
Nice. And what made you want to get into gym ownership in the first place?
So I was in the army when I was younger. I'm 35 now. I joined the army when I was 18, and I was not into fitness. I was definitely not like your normal um, like workout head at all. I knew I needed to be in better shape than I was, and Army physical training sucks. Like that's a little known fact. It's very lame. It's boring. It's not fun, and it honestly doesn't get you very fit. It just makes you very mentally tough. Um, so sometime in between my first, no, actually, I think right after my second deployment, I decided like I needed to be in better shape, so I found CrossFit. And I got my ass just absolutely handed to me in a CrossFit workout with somebody. After I was talking all kinds of smack about how CrossFit wasn't very good. And I got hooked like immediately. I was like, okay, this is something I want to be doing, you know? Um, I,
It's funny. I was just thinking, you never hear the opposite of that story. Like, no one's ever like, I got into CrossFit and I found it really easy.
yeah,
Maybe Matt Frazier, but like, see,
yeah,
minus him, your story is everyone's origin story with CrossFit.
yeah. And in the army, especially at that time, probably the entire military at that time, it was very popular to crap on CrossFit, to just say it was lame. Speaking completely unknowledgeably, none of these people had experienced it. It was just the boogeyman that you talk bad about, and then eventually, one person would try it, and all of a sudden they were a cultist, and that little by little thing would happen to everybody you knew.
I think every time you introduce something kind of extreme to an average body of people, people love to make fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah,
think you see the same kind of mentality around some of these Spartan races and like the Ninja Warrior stuff. People are kind of like, you're a dad, bro. Like, why are you swinging around?
yeah,
So I think there's some of that, and obviously there's some jealousy baked in there. But yeah, I mean, I came from the traditional exercise science background, and I felt the same way. Like everyone inside of the university level or at the university level would just kind of like would blow it off. They're like, oh, this is going to be a fad. It's going to go away. This is stupid.
yeah. That was definitely part of it. There were the traditional people who had run and done push-ups forever, and done like Men's Health magazine stuff. That was like how people in the army stayed fit. Um, just believing the new fad was going to go away. But then there was also this additional thing where most of the people talking about CrossFit were the officers. So, you're like this combat vet dude, and then this 23-year-old brand new lieutenant who just got out of his like communications degree or something is telling you about how like everything is wrong and you need to be doing CrossFit. So immediately you're like, yeah, I don't trust that. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was how I found it. And then when I got out of the army, or when I was thinking about getting out of the army, I was trying to think about what I was going to do. I went to school, I went to college to become an athletic trainer, like a certified athletic trainer. So similar to like human performance or exercise physiology. Um, and I was recognizing that I wasn't really able to help people with that as much as I wanted to. Like I liked what I was getting from it, but I didn't like what I was going to be able to do with that degree. So me and a couple buddies decided to open up a gym. Um, I was not an owner at the beginning. I was a coach, but I was like I became a partner very shortly after we opened up. Um, but it was fun. It was like this is a way we can actually affect a lot of people every day.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the easiest transitions into a place where you can help the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that it's an easy transition in starting a gym, but in terms of like, if your goal is to help people in the health and fitness space, it's one of the best avenues to do it because there's just so few barriers to entry in comparison to doing some other things.
Yeah, when I went to a course. I think it was called CrossFit Mobility back then. I'm not sure if that's still what it's called, but this is almost 10 years ago at this point. And the physical therapist teaching it, he had a really good point. He was like, I'm a PT. I get to work with like 9 patients a day. That means I get 9 people I get to have hands on or make a connection or make an effect with. You're going to see 60 or 70 in a day. So like you're going to have a higher return than I will on what you can actually do out of this. And that's, I've always kind of kept that in my head whenever I think about what we do as a gym.
Yeah, I mean, I always use it as a conversational point and think about it from the perspective of um, CrossFit or your fitness journey, whatever it is you choose to do is basically like an additional insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to look at it at that same level of value because it's not just for you, it's for your entire family. And you can argue that it's almost more impactful in many cases than your actual health insurance, right? Because it's something you're actually utilizing every single day.
Yeah, and it's preventative, right? And it's hard to measure the value of preventative service, right? But I mean, if you take care of your car and your car exists for 5 more years, that's better than if you didn't take care of your car and it doesn't exist and you have to buy a new car, right?
Right. Yeah. Now, you also own a Florida Grid League team, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do the Southwest Florida Sharks.
And how'd you get involved with that?
how did I get involved with that? The commissioner of the Florida Grid League is Mather Wiswall. He's a good friend of mine. He he and his sister Ruby, the director of operations, they were team owners in the original like National Grid League that what was that 10 years ago that popped up.
About, yeah.
Yeah, they were team owners. They were in love with the sport. That organization had its organizational hurdles that made it not be around anymore.
It's a good way
Um,
of putting it.
yeah, but they are very very smart business minded people who were passionate about the sport. So they decided like we don't want this to die. Let's continue this. So they created the Florida Grid League, and it started as a kind of like a very amateur like pop up competition thing. Like there'd be like a grid competition in Miami or one in Orlando or whatever. They were really smart about kind of generating interest all over our state, all over Florida with it, you know. Um, then they announced plans to start a league or a season, and then they very smartly recruited people who had the means and the passion to and I think an undervalued point was like the leadership ability to start an organization and run a team. I think I was the third team recruited. It was like Miami, Tampa, and then us.
How many are there in total now?
There's eight across the state. Um, we I'm trying to think. Was it season seven? We're in season seven right now. We're in the playoffs. We play in 2 weeks, and then the season will be over. But it was super fun. I mean, I was kind of similar to CrossFit. I was kind of like a grid hater. I was like, this is not, this is weird. This isn't CrossFit. This is new. I don't know what this is. And
Can you, just because we have so many listeners that are obviously very keen and tuned into the CrossFit world, can you explain a little bit about the differences and what kind of makes Grid League unique in the way that it runs?
yeah, for sure. Matthew's gonna be so happy you asked me that question. The difference is CrossFit is like first and foremost a training principle, a training theory, a training methodology. You know, um, and that's awesome. Like that's actually what I love about CrossFit is the training portion. I think it's the best thing that's ever happened to fitness, bar none. It would be hard to argue against that. I think with the popularization of like every niched off brand that started because of CrossFit. Um, okay, so that's one thing. Then CrossFit also has like a competitive wing, right? And the competitive wing of CrossFit, in my opinion, for the most part, is just who is the fittest person. Most times the fittest person will win. You know, there's there's some variables in there. There's injury. There's very specific strengths and weaknesses. But for the most part, averaged out over enough events, the fittest person will usually win, and that's cool. That's what the sport is. You take the team version of CrossFit; it's basically who has the four fittest people, right, or the six fittest, or whatever it is right now. Grid's the exact opposite of that. The movements are the same, but it's a whole lot closer to like football in that like there's wide receivers and offensive linemen on the same team. Um, and what's really cool about grid is that oftentimes, I would argue most times actually, the fittest team doesn't win because it's so strategy heavy. You know, on my team we have a guy. His name's Quentin. He weighs 110 pounds. He can't pick up a 35-pound kettlebell without hurting himself. Like we've learned that the hard way. But he can like run on his hands, and he can do like backwards roll the supports on the rings, and he can do all kinds of things that defy physics and logic.
Yeah.
Um, and you have like these jack dudes who can snatch 350 in our league. And Quentin is the scariest person in grid, and everybody knows that because he runs onto the grid, and the other team just goes like, "Ah, fuck, we lost." And like that's something that's really really cool about grid is that he is so valuable. Whereas like in CrossFit, you go to a competition and you can't thruster 135, you may as well not be there.
Right. So it just basically takes the specialist that would would do terribly in CrossFit and gives them kind of a safe haven to demonstrate their skills and and like utilize them for the betterment of a team.
Yeah, that's what's really cool about it. And some demos that I think would like generally do poorly at CrossFit. So take like larger women, stronger women who maybe not be quite as good at like burpees or gymnastics, smaller guys who may not have like the top level strength to do say like very heavy cleans or squats or snatches or whatever. Those players can be extremely valuable in grid. In fact, like those two demos I just said are actually the most valuable ones in grid. And it's up to a coach to put together up to 18 people and utilize all of their strengths, you know?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And are the events announced in advance, or do they get rolled out as the event goes on?
Yeah, I guess that's another difference, right? Is like we know our matches pretty early. So like our playoffs are happening November 2nd and 3rd, I believe, a Friday and a Saturday. Like I know the match we're playing the Orlando Aces in, and I know the match that if we move on to the championship, we'll be playing the other team in. So our players have the ability to practice these things. There's just like tons of rehearsal and tons of looking for little ways to save 1/2 second on a movement and to do that over 20 or 30 reps. And then because of that, win the race, you know?
Yeah. Now you're still competing in this yourself, correct?
I am personally not. This year I retired. It was just entirely too stressful to be running into a race, jumping onto the sideline, coaching it, going back into the race. I decided like I'm at 35, I'm done. It's over.
Yeah.
I hung my sneakers up, you know?
Too many spinning plates, man.
Yeah,
Too
for
many
sure.
spinning plates. Yeah, I mean it's so funny like coming anyone that comes from like an athletic background, it's so hard to hang it up. And the nice thing that I think is we're starting to see more of now is there's just more opportunities for people that want to compete in something and not take it like crazy seriously, but at least have some performance-based goals to work towards. You can pick it back up whenever you want. It doesn't mean that it's ever going to be easy to put it back down.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that's actually something that I think CrossFit is fantastic for, right? Is the idea that like you're done doing the thing you did, whatever that is. There's a whole world of like semi competitiveness you could be jumping into.
Yeah, for sure. And at any level, right? Like you could just look forward to the open every single year. And never have any aspirations of going beyond that, but just wanting to compete within the pool of the people in your gym and people in your age bracket.
Yeah. I love that.
Now, alongside of running a grid league and owning two gyms, you are also a gym mentor or gym owner mentor through Two Brain Business, which I've been involved with now for a number of years. How has your experience as a mentor and working with so many different gym owners helped transform you as a leader and a gym owner?
Yeah. Yeah. So, right. With Two Brand Business, I'm a business mentor in the growth and ramp up programs. And then I'm a coach in the Tinker Mastermind program. The, it's been awesome, man. It's been awesome. That's currently the most rewarding thing I do for sure. Um, you think about you, me, everyone we know when we were brand new gym owners, or let's not just say brand new, but inexperienced, and more importantly, we don't have a network of people we can share information with. Like we don't have a group to learn from. That level of experience. I love working with owners that are at that phase of their career, because it's all ambition, but no idea how to get there. You know. So I love help.
It's like hard work without strategy.
Exactly, right? And like, because you don't get into this industry generally with like without the passion portion. There's like other things you could do. Um, so I love working with that group of people and just kind of helping them understand how to connect A to B and B to C, because the result can be so good. And the result I think that's something I'll say too that I love is that the result is different for everybody. Some people are trying to make a bunch of money. Some people are just trying to affect a bunch of change. Some of the people I work with have other careers and they're really just passionate about growing either careers for their staff or just helping people through fitness. And you get to help them do that. It's so much fun.
No, I would say there's probably two main buckets that when you're working with a business owner, and in this case a gym owner, that you are trying to improve upon. One being skill sets and one being self-belief. So let's kind of talk about those separately a little bit. In the skill set bucket, what are some of the main skill sets you feel that you have to instill into these gym owners and help them kind of build inside of their facilities?
Yeah, that's a really good way to ask the question, because that second one, the self belief one, is a skill set in itself, right? It's the confidence to know what I'm doing is right and the thing I do helps people, and it's okay that it costs money, and that's gonna lead to maybe some uncomfortable conversations, and that's also okay. Skill set wise, I think the one that's really undervalued is like quality of service. you know um, and that's hard to talk about sometimes from like a business mentor standpoint or even just like common conversation, because it's a little taboo. But like if your service sucks, your business is going to suck. You can't just say like, I am CrossFit, therefore give me money,
Well, there's some immeasurables in there as well, right?
for
Like,
sure.
and sometimes this just comes off in the personality of the person running the gym and the types of people that they attract because of who they are.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like if you're a super combative person, or if you're a super like outwardly emotional person, you're going to naturally attract those people, and if you aim that positively or negatively, you'll attract people who are attracted positively or negatively to that. If you're somebody who posts inflammatory crap on Facebook all the time, it's not going to be surprising if you have those people join your gym a lot.
Right. Yeah. And to your point, I could see how this could be a difficult thing to talk about because we brought passion into the conversation of most gym owners get into it because they're passionate about it.
Mm.
It's not the easiest business to to make lucrative, right? There's a million other directions you could go. So because of that passion, there's usually some level of, if not ego, at least there's this like internal fire and belief of like the thing that you're doing, and being told, hey, you need to take the thing that you're doing and make it better can be a little bit of an ego hit, I feel like, for young gym owners.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the benefits of having a mentor specifically. Like, I mean, there's a million benefits and you and I can both speak to them, but like, I think that's having the ability to have somebody who can be like, hey, look, I know you, I respect you. Here's a thing I'm telling you might not like, but I'm only telling you this because like, that's what you're paying me for. Having that, I think is invaluable because it's very easy to go down a path for a while and have nobody around you tell you it's a bad idea.
Yeah. So outside of quality of service, what else is on that plate?
Yeah, I mean, understanding metrics. I think very few gym owners start our career, start our business, understanding like the valuable things you need to know about your business. I think almost everybody I've ever talked to, I mean, I'll just say me. I'll say me. I know when I first started, I thought having the most members was the most important thing. The more members you get, the better your business is. And I remember bragging to my friends who were gym owners around here about how I had more members than them, back in the day. There's a point where my gym had like 250 members, and I thought that meant we were the most successful gym by far. We also made no money. I didn't make any money. My staff weren't paid. We didn't have enough equipment. Our coaching service was far lower than I thought it was quality wise. Um, so understanding metrics, but then like learning things like arm and leg, your average revenue per member and your length of engagement, understanding how valuable those are versus say your total number of members. I think that's something that we have to teach people right at the beginning, and that feels wrong, because that's just not what feels like the correct metric because you want big classes.
It's so funny whenever I use the term arm and leg with people that are outside of my space when I'm explaining something within the fitness industry, they always find it funny that it's like paralleled to like physiology. And I think to myself, but it very heavily is, because in the same way, there's metrics that are oftentimes not being tracked with our fitness clients that just by like starting to measure things like food intake and regular weight check-ins, it all of a sudden it reframes the person's fitness journey, right? And we see this all the time. Like the minute someone starts measuring their food and like tracking macros, they're just like, oh my gosh, like their thought process around food selection changes instantaneously. And I'm sure you see the same thing with gym owners as they start tracking some of these really important, key performance indicators, it starts to change their behavior of how they're running their gyms.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's exactly like you get the person to start writing a food diary. All of a sudden, they lose 7 pounds. It's just because now I'm not eating 3 burgers; I'm eating 1 burger. The arm is the same way, or leg is the same way, or understanding your expenses are the same way. Understanding maybe you don't need to buy a new rower every month. Like as soon as you start tracking that, it gets better. It's a wild idea.
Yeah. Now let's move into the other bucket. So in terms of self beliefs, what do you think are some of the biggest hurdles that gym owners need to get over in the very beginning?
Yeah, this is my niche right here. This is the thing that I am best at and I feel most comfortable working with is because like if you've chosen this career, you already have, in my opinion, the most respectable quality that exists in that like you're altruistic, right? You want to help people. You've decided I'm not going to be an investment banker and make a ton of money. I'm going to like I'm going to argue with a 40-year-old dude who doesn't want to squat real well so that I can make his life qualitatively better, you know? Like you've chosen that. So because of that, like I already think you deserve whatever the hell you want in life. You deserve all the good stuff because you're going to make your life more difficult in an effort to help others, you know? So that group of people who's kind of struggling with that self-confidence a little bit, that am I really good enough to do this? Am I really helping people the way I want to be helping people? Am I ever going to be able to pay my mortgage? Like that group of people, like I love working with that demo, you know, because a big part of it is just remembering that like what you do saves lives. If you're in the gym space, what you do saves lives. And that's not an over exaggeration. That's not an embellishment. We just talked about like this is preventative medicine. And we don't call it that yet, but we will eventually. You know, like this is as important as any doctor's visit you've ever been to, I guess, until you have something terminal and it needs to be taken care of. You know, like the idea that you're going to choose to do this with your life means you deserve as much reward as is possible. Okay. So knowing that, helping people see that, like, you know what I mean? Like when you have a client who like, is like, oh, I don't know if I'm getting stronger. And you're like, dude, you've squatted 40 more pounds than you used to squat. Like that's clearly you getting stronger. Helping like gym owners know that is something we have to do, and just kind of reminding them like, look at the progress you've made, look at the success you're having, look at the help you're doing for others. That's a big part of that self-belief thing, you know. Does that make sense?
It reminds me of the gap and the gain,
Mm-hmm.
in the difference of constantly comparing ourselves to other people in the industry or our competitors, the people we may look up to, rather than comparing ourselves to the previous versions of ourselves and looking back in our track history and seeing all the improvements we've made to get to where we are. You know, I think, and again, like I'm going to keep making this parallel just because it's so simple. Like there are people that have fitness goals that they have a 3-year goal that they want to accomplish in 3 months. Right. And I'm not, but gym ownership's the same way. Like
Mm-hmm.
your description of the lack of self-beliefs is like, it just so heavily reminded me of my first like 5 or 6 years of gym ownership. There was a point in time where I was wondering, I was like, if I choose this path long-term, am I actually going to have to sacrifice all of the other things in my life? Like, is it that level of a sacrifice that I'm not going to be able to have multiple kids because I can't afford it? I won't be able to have a mortgage because I can't afford it. Right. Like I won't be able to ever travel. Like I don't think I traveled more than like a weekend at a time for like the first 6 years of owning a gym,
Same.
you know?
Yeah.
And like, so it's just funny. Like when it's so hard to get yourself out of that mindset without the presence of a mentor. And I think that that's really the biggest like transformative opportunity for gym owners, is having someone to be that third party outside of their core at the gym that is with them day in and day out to help pull them away from it.
Yeah. Excuse me. The limiting of the self-belief, like when you were talking about your first couple of years as a gym owner, and I think about my first couple of years. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that like your only experience was other gym owners in your area who may or may not have been successful either, right?
For the most part, I mean, the online presence was much more limited back then.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
Instagram, like Instagram wasn't out. There wasn't like millions of people touting their success on Instagram in 2014.
Right, exactly. And so that's why I said going back to, who has the most members was like our only comparative metric, because nobody was going to talk about how much money they were making or not making. But knowing what I know now, it's very clear how much money many gyms were making back then. The idea that we hadn't seen success. Nobody had seen anybody else be successful. So somebody traveling, a gym owner traveling, doesn't seem possible because who's going to coach 5 a.m. on Monday?
Right.
To know that there are gym owners who do that and do live that lifestyle as a new gym owner, even if you're not there yet right now, just knowing that exists and knowing that somebody can clearly take you on the path to that, wildly powerful.
Yeah, I think for the uneducated looking into or asking questions to a gym owner, it is similar to the uneducated asking questions about fitness. Like the coined question in fitness is like, how much do you bench? Right. And then when you're a gym owner, it's like, well, how many members do you have?
Yep.
So I think it's really easy in the very beginning to lean on that so heavily, and you're in like the belief of like using that as like the ultimate arbitrator of how successful your gym is.
Yeah. Well, I think you hit a great point right there. how successful your gym is, right? And that question or that idea is completely different for everybody because you, as the business owner, get to decide what the measure of success for you is. And when you're new, you have no idea what that's going to be.
Right. Well,
That's what.
now you have exposure to gyms, I'm sure, that have 400 members and are barely breaking even, and you have gyms that have 70 members and are massively profitable.
Yeah, for sure. And oftentimes that 70 member gym, the owner is making more money than the 400 member gym.
And has a better schedule.
Mhm.
Like
Higher quality of life for sure. Yep.
yeah, because that's I mean that part right there I think is another one to is very difficult to grapple with as a gym owner because you are so passionate and you want to have your hands in everything, but as your life evolves, like you forget the fact that like life is going to go on and you're going to get older and you're going to have a family and want to do things and start removing yourself from your gym is in my opinion one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. The removing yourself from your gym is in any facet because like that phrase used to scare the hell out of me. Removing yourself from the gym because I didn't want to be removed from the gym. I like what I do a lot. I like what I do a lot, a lot, a lot. And even this many years in, with all the things you were saying I was doing, like I still coach group classes. I still love coaching group classes. So I made a lifestyle in which I get to coach group classes.
Yeah.
Um, but you're right. If you're still doing everything in your gym business, it can't grow and you probably can't live the lifestyle you want to live no matter how much money you make.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I was just having a conversation last night on the way home from the Phillies game. And my favorite thing now is to sit across from somebody. And this could be, it could be during a personal training session. It could be after a class while we're just sitting and having a conversation. It could be someone reaching out to me, out on a limb through a social media or whatever. The opportunity to have a conversation with someone that wants to achieve something but sees a roadblock in front of them, whether it be a belief issue or a logistics issue, a timing issue, just the general belief that they have this goal and for whatever reason they can't accomplish it, helping people do the kind of like the mental jujitsu to reframe the problem and see it as something that they can actually achieve for themselves. That is by far my favorite thing to do in coaching. Like if I could do that all day, that's all I would do.
Yeah, that problem solving and the the real like you see the end result. You're like, okay, I know how to get you here. You know that they can see the beginning and the end, but the middle is murky. And because you've done this a bunch of times, you have examples of how to get them through that murkiness, right? Like that's
Yep.
so much fun. I love that.
Yeah, it's just reframing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because at the end of the day, it's like they frame it in some sort of a negative light and in a way that is not going to be they're not going to have the ability to accomplish it, and you reframe in a way of no, this is actually quite manageable, and it doesn't need to be as difficult as you're making it out to be. The story you're telling yourself is what's holding you back the most.
Yeah, that story you're telling yourself is so powerful, right? Because we don't. I think most of the time we're not aware when we're telling ourselves those stories, and in anything, in whatever whatever limiting beliefs you have, you're not always aware that you're doing it, whether it's about money or fitness or health or happiness or whatever. And you really need somebody else to be like, yo, why do you think that?
Yeah. There's if I ever start another podcast, there's two titles, so no one please steal these. But one is Find Your Parachute because I love people that make a leap and then just figure it out on the way. And the other one is Break My Beliefs. Like I would love to have a podcast where I just bring people on to like crush my beliefs and the beliefs of the listeners in like some of the most common things that people believe that aren't true or that they could see the world differently.
I like that idea. I like that idea a lot. The first one you said though, the parachute one, I love that. I mean, I'm a firm believer in if you're passionate enough about something, like go for it. And once you go for it, you're gonna be like, shit, I got to figure out how I do this. And that's scary, but yeah.
I think the average person greatly overestimates how much people actually know what they're doing.
Yes. Okay,
You
so
know,
that right there. When I was in the Army, I said this constantly. I was an infantryman. I was 22 years old and I was a squad leader, which is as young as you can possibly be that, right? And I can't tell you how many times I would say to myself, like, If anyone had any idea how little I know about what I'm doing right now, there's 9 guys whose lives are in my hands from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed, millions and millions of dollars in my responsibility. All the time I'd be making shit up as I went. And everybody around me was too. Like it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
That gave me really important perspective to realize that nobody knows what they're doing ever on anything.
No, and I think there's some humility in that, but there's lessons baked in there. Like you have to recognize that hard things are worth doing, and that it requires problem solving forever. Like you're never going to get to the land of freedom from problem solving, and
Yeah.
you probably actually not probably you 1000% wouldn't want that. Like no, that the idea like we think about this from like the retirement perspective. It's like everyone, I guess, like you imagine this heavenly place of like you're on the beach, you have the margarita, and you're reading a book and you're watching the waves, and it's like okay, like 4 hours goes by, now what, right? Like now what's next? And I think that this is where we all need a bone to gnaw on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that like that needs to be something that's challenging and difficult and force us into problem solving. It's the absence of that is not peace.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The problem solving, I think, is the thing, right? Because people assume that if you're the CEO of a company, you know everything you need to know about being the CEO of the company. And that's, I believe, untrue almost all of the time. But you've learned the problem solving skills to just deal with the problems that come with that role. And then you go to your next thing. You've taken those problem solving skills and you now apply them to your new like rule book. I feel like that's kind of just what the most successful people do over and over and over again.
Yeah, I heard there was a quote. I'm going to totally paraphrase it, but it was basically like people that get things done spend time around other people that get things done, and it made me think about kind of like my own personal experience and trajectory as like just a thought leader and gym owner and business owner, and like how I keep kind of leveling up into circles where I get around people, and yes, initially I have this feeling of imposter syndrome, but I should have that feeling because I'm moving into a new level, right? Like I'm just kind of I'm the rookie, I'm the beginner. But what it does is it expands, speaking of breaking my beliefs, it expands my worldview because like I see now 30 different opportunities or angles or directions that I could take with my life that I didn't even know existed prior to that.
Yeah, I've felt that in every new group of individuals I get into. And then if I don't feel that, I'm uninterested in being around that group of individuals. But if we take that back to the gym space, right? Like that mentality, when a person joins the gym and they're maybe not in the shape they want to be in and they haven't been doing this on a regular basis, and then they get there and they meet people who come in 6 days a week, and those people aren't like psychopaths. They're just normal people who have made time in their weekly schedule to get to the gym 5 to 6 times a week. You start thinking like, oh my God, I could be one of those people too. I don't actually have to give up everything in my life to accomplish this.
Yeah, I don't remember who said this, but there was a quote that went out that was like, your heroes are just people that became incredibly obsessed about a very narrow field of things and did it for a very long time. Right. And it's like, I think that's how people view people that are in their 40s or 50s and are just unbelievably fit. It's like the reality is they're just average people that have consistently worked out for 2 or 3 decades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that 2 or 3 decades is what it is. They're not doing anything probably wildly special. They're just consistently doing it for a very long time.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you could give young Nick a piece of advice going into gym ownership and it can't be get a mentor,
Hmm.
what would it be?
Um, man. If you can't be get a mentor, I would tell them to try to surround yourself around other people you think are actually successful. Um, I know that's kind of like peer mentorship, so I guess that's kind of a cop out. Uh, Another one would be like start thinking about how you value the people around you, right? So young Nick in the gym business knew I wanted a team of people around me. I knew I wanted staff. I never wanted to be a one man show. That was really important to me. Um, but I was grasping for anybody who would come near me. I wasn't evaluating the people around me well enough, and that led to some very expensive and emotionally challenging mistakes, you know? So I don't know how I would say to do that, but that's the direction I would aim that young dude in for sure.
I heard a statistic yesterday on a podcast that really heavily relates to the point you made around getting around successful people. So they've done a handful of studies looking at people within the low socioeconomic, people with low socioeconomic status and the neighborhoods or areas that they grew up in. And the people that were exclusively surrounded by people of just low socioeconomic status in comparison to those that grew up in more like split neighborhoods where there was like, you know, bigger houses, nicer cars, like more wealthy people. The people that even just spent time around wealthier people earned 33% more throughout the course of their life. Right. And I think, and again, like this is that bending of the worldview. I think it's just giving you a portal into what's possible.
Yeah, I fully believe that to be true, by the way. Like I grew up in not the best situations always, you know, like my parents are amazing people. Neither of them graduated high school. I I think I might be the first person to have gone to college in my like line, you know. And that's really only because the army paid for it. Then I look at like say my wife who grew up in New Jersey and just a very different upbringing than I did, and I meet some of her friends and I think about the things that they were exposed to at a young age that they know about and things that you know in the say in the ticker group that you and I are learning about in 2023 they've known about since 1992, and I'm amazed about that. But if you're around the people that can expose you to those things and you are a person who can take advantage of those things, you're going to have a better opportunity than if not, right?
Well, then this is kind of the main point of the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, right?
Absolutely.
It's just the observation of the types of behaviors and decisions that the rich dad makes in comparison to the poor dad. It's not necessarily the direct teaching.
Yeah, and you ever get exposed to something so much you think like, oh, I don't have to actually consume that media because I know the idea to it. That was Rich Dad Poor Dad for me. I'd like heard so many people talk about it that I didn't think I ever needed to actually listen to the book or read the book. I listened to it a month ago, and I was like, my God, where was this 10 years ago, dude? Like what? My life would have been so much easier, and I would have made so much more money if I would have just read this damn book. You know?
Yeah, it's I'm not far off from you. I think I listened to that on audiobook probably a little over a year ago. And it was the same thing. It was like, to me, I put that book on the same level as like How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's just like, it's a classic. Everyone talked about it. And you're like, yeah. You know, and like, luckily for me, I was forced to read How to Win Friends and Influence People when I was in college, and I loved it. And I've read it multiple times since. But there are other books that I'm just in the same boat. I'm like, I'll get the summary.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like I've heard about it enough. I'm sure I know the keynotes here. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, when you and I were in Austin for Tinker Meetup, we nerded out for probably a good hour just talking everything CrossFit and fitness and nutrition and health while we were probably eating not so healthy food ourselves. The good old, the irony of gym ownership. But with that said, I want to dive down this rabbit hole a little bit because I think that I don't want to say we're at a precipice, but like we are at a very interesting time, especially in the United States as it relates to the obesity epidemic and some really big decisions that need to be made in the way that healthcare and preventative healthcare, for that matter, are going to take place and influence our population over the course of the next couple decades. So my first question is, what do you think are some of the biggest opportunities that we're missing out on at this very moment to help transform the current epidemic that's going on with our health in this country?
Yeah, what a great question. I think a belief I have is that people will ignore the obvious for the new, you know, the new and the sexy, right? So for example, like ice baths, right? Like I'm enjoying doing that right now. I think if I didn't work out on a regular basis, an ice bath would be a waste of time. You know, some other like trendy fitnessy things, saunas, mouth taping, you know, stuff like diet wise keto or paleo or fasting or like this idea of like something being new and sexy being the right thing versus things that we can all agree are definitely the right things, like just exercising on a daily basis or eating like 10% less than you have been, right? Does that make sense? Like those are so boring, but they are so clearly the right answer. I wish we could help people understand that they don't need the sexiest, newest thing, you know?
Yeah, and along with that, understanding that the biggest impact you make on your health is usually within the first 10 pounds, 10 pounds or 10% of body weight lost, right? Like, in other words, your the biggest increase in your health and fitness occurs from the lowest quartile to the second quartile.
Mm.
It's not from 75% to 90%. It's like at that level, yes, like your performance indicators look great, but like your level of health doesn't adjust that much. But just going to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, just starting to drink enough water, just starting to get in 7,000 plus steps a day, those move the needle way more than like trying to attain this like bodybuilder type look.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That exactly. I listened to a Ben Bergeron podcast. Can't remember if it was his or if he was on somebody. It's probably about a year and a half ago. And he said something on it, or maybe it was the other guy. I can't remember. They said something on there that like rattled my brain because it was a thought I've had inside, but I hadn't put into words. Um, it talked about instead of taking people from like a B to an A fitness wise, taking people from like a D to a C plus, and that is a feeling that I have been feeling for a very long time. In fact, it's a big part of why I de-affiliated from CrossFit in the brand in general, is because I'm far less motivated to help somebody hit their 97% snatch than I am to like get Bobby to like just show up 3 times a week so that his cholesterol goes down a little bit so that he lives 2 more years. And maybe not the 2 more years, but his quality of life for those 2 more years is 40% higher. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I want to bounce something off you. I was thinking about this last night as I was wide awake from screaming at a Phillies game for about 4 hours. I was thinking that most people need to there's a certain hurdle that people need to get over that create a life of fitness and health that is worth maintaining, right? So let me expand on that a little bit. What I mean by that is if you don't go to the gym at all and you don't eat healthy at all, you likely also do not take part in activities in your life that you look forward to, right? That require some level of physical competency,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whereas when you introduce that and you get Bobby to start going to the gym 3 days a week and make some slight adjustments to his nutrition, and he starts to see changes to his body, both in the way that he looks and in the things that he can do, and he now can take part in physical activities, playing with his kids, throwing a ball, going on longer walks, being able to play 18 holes and not have swollen knees. Now he has a life, right, and a level of fitness that is worth maintaining. And I feel like getting people over that initial hurdle is so helpful because it just increases the likelihood that they're never going to give it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the never giving it up is the real thing, right? Because you don't have to be the fittest person in the world, but you have to. Damn it! I wish I could remember who said this to me, but a 55-year-old didn't forget how to jump yesterday. They haven't jumped in 30 years, and that's why they can't jump. Right? Like the idea is that like I have a guy at my gym. His name is Joe. He's 78, 79. We work out together on a pretty regular basis. He'll come to a class and I'll hop in with him and we work out, and he does stuff that people I know who are 35 can't do. And it's not because he's the fittest human being in the world, because he's not, but he just never stopped doing those things. Like he made it a point that he's going to be a person who exercises and not exercises for 3 hours a day and counts his macros and like does everything super specific. He's just like, physical activity is not going to be something I stop doing until the day I die. And he's 79 and a whole bunch of his friends aren't around anymore, but he is.
Yeah. Well, and much like we talked about how in business ownership and becoming an entrepreneur, spending time around successful people is really transformative. The same is true on the fitness side.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
The more time you spend around people that just are making a million small decisions differently than you were in your previous life, it persuades you slowly, but definitely over time to where like you're grabbing one thing over another when you go out to the barbecue, right? Or you're choosing to do your 10-minute workout because you don't have time to put in an hour workout, but before you would have just stayed in bed, right? So it's like, it's those little decisions that rub off on you from spending more time around active people that I feel like really start to help move the needle in the right direction.
Yeah, I had a really impactful thing happen. So I just got back from my honeymoon 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that, and we took a cruise. We went to Europe. Flew to Greece.
Nice.
It was amazing. I could talk about that for an hour. We won't, but I hopped on a cruise in Greece and we went through like the Greek Isles and went to Turkey and it was fantastic. Right. So again, I live in Florida. In our no sweat intros and our consultations, pretty often people will say to me like, I want to be able to go on a cruise and do something fun, right? Because we'll have like an older population down here, and I think I maybe didn't have a reference for that to what they were talking about. In my mind, I was like, you're on a boat, dude. Like how physically inactive are you that you can't enjoy being on a boat, right? So, okay, now fast forward to a month ago, I'm on this cruise. Every day we would go do these excursions, right? And you hop off the boat, you get sometimes on another boat, other times onto the dock, and then you go do these things. The first day we walked around for 7.5 hours through like a busy city in Istanbul, Turkey. And I'm watching these people that are older have to just not walk anymore. Like they're just like, I'll catch you later. I'm done for the day. Then there were a couple other days where people would get to the excursion and these people were clearly not healthy individuals and recognize that they just can't do it. So they've spent money on it and they can't partake in this anymore. Or people just never left the boat because they couldn't get off the boat. And it was definitely a glass shattering moment for me, that's what the downside of all this is if you don't do these things.
I had a very similar kind of like epiphany moment so I went to Italy over the summer and there were 5 of us, 25 in total, I think. But in terms of who we were traveling with, there were 5 of us and 1 baby, my 3-month-old, and we had 23 bags. So going from the airport to the hotel to trains to other like trains and lugging all of that stuff, I thought to myself, like, people assume that when they retire they're going to be able to travel, right? And granted, they're not going to have 23 bags, but just seeing the like hustle and bustle of like getting from one place to the next and like having to like scurry through these different train stations and whatnot, I was like, this is a chore. Like, I'm sweating right now, and
Yeah.
I'm 34 years old and fit. So imagining myself twice my age, right? It's like you're going to need to still possess a good amount of cardiovascular endurance and muscle strength to be able to do this and enjoy it.
Yeah, you don't have to be the fittest person in the world. That's not. You don't need to have a six pack, but you need to have done things where your legs bend and you have to pick up your own body weight again. Like we went to Santorini, Greece, which is one of the last days, and that's like one of the Instagram islands in Greece that everyone's always taking pictures in. It's like up in a mountain basically, and the only way up and down is via these like cable cars, right? And the cable cars broke when we were there. So to come back down and to make it to our boat in time, we had to walk down a mountain basically, right? And it took us 30 minutes to do this. And like, I'm pretty fit. There were people who just couldn't come down. Like the boat had to wait because half our boat couldn't get down.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about people who are like, suffering from disabilities, injured. Like I'm just saying people who are like too unfit to live life and make it back to the boat to go eat and drink.
There's so many eye-opening experiences the more we travel and get outside of our comfort zones as gyms, because I think we forget sometimes just how much of a filtration system our gyms are,
Without a doubt. Yeah.
Because even the most unfit person that walks through our doors changes fairly rapidly if they're consistent.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, in terms of their mindset around health and fitness.
Yeah, I can do things. I can do these things because I've seen other people do these things. Yeah, exactly.
I am a capable person. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, one of the biggest battles we face in the fitness and nutrition industries is the fact that, we hear the analogy of like, when you don't take care of yourself, your body becomes your prison. And this might be a controversial take, but I see it as though medicine has while there's been some massive upsides to it, it has largely just removed the death penalty, right, from that prison. In the way that if you got diabetes 500 years ago, you weren't making it,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you got hypertension 500 years ago, you weren't making it. Now, people are able to go to the doctor and get prescribed a whole slew of medications, right, that come with obvious, trade-offs and side effects, but that can at least prolong their life to be able to negate some of the negative effects of these different disease states. And I think that this puts us in a difficult situation, because now as we're starting to see this emergence of weight loss drugs, that personally, like, I have grown to appreciate the fact that they have their place at the right place and right time, for the right individuals. So as long as they are combined with like positive lifestyle
Yeah,
changes,
lifestyle
right?
change. Yeah, yeah.
Right. But at the same time, like, we talk about preventative care, preventative medicine as it relates to the stuff that we do inside of our gyms. And it's a really hard conversation to have with a population of people that I feel like are just like constantly inundated with all of the things they could take to alleviate their symptoms.
Yeah, that is such a problem, because no matter what is created, you will still have to be physically active and eat a little bit more okay than you want to. Like, those two will never change. You like Ozempic, right, or whatever the other weight loss drugs are that are out there. I have a couple ladies in my gym who've chosen to do that. And that's cool. Those two, the two that I'm thinking of very specifically, are in incredible shape right now, because not only did they do that, but they also made positive life change along the path of doing that, and maintained those positive lifestyle changes. They still exercise on a regular basis. I think it's contraindicated to do like heavy lifting during that time, but they still came in and did like minor, you know, uh, uh, like maintenance style exercise during that time, and they've continued to do so. Shockingly, they haven't put weight back on. They've now started to gain significant muscle mass, which was their goal, right? Like, they're living positively. If you think that just taking a shot of any kind is going to magically make you lose weight and look better and feel better and have no downside long term, you're cuckoo pants. There's no way. It's not going to happen.
No, no. Now, because of your experience in working with so many different gym owners that run different models and they're operationally different from one another, you've had a lot of exposure to, fitness on a grand scale. Where do you see fitness going over the next 10 or 20 years?
Um, yeah, just like with anything, right? Like, people are constantly looking for quick fixes, and similar to like the Ozempic and everything else. I think it's going to be really important for people who are in the gym industry, in the fitness industry, in the health industry, to preach the same message constantly. And that message is, there is no quick fix. Like, you have to be willing to put a small amount of work in to do it, like a relatively small amount of work in. Like, if you can do a physical activity for 3 or 4 days a week, you will see results. If you can't do that, you will not see results. And I think, like, snake oil salesmen who will come in and say, if you do it for 4 minutes a day, you'll be fine, or you don't need to do these things, really mess up the rest of the industry, and honestly mess up the long-term health of our country, which sucks. Um, so I think that that's like what we have to push towards. And I really hope everybody feels the same way. Now, I know that's not real, but I like, for example, I think like Peloton popping up in the last couple of years, right, was an attempt at pushing in the opposite direction. We'll make this as easy as possible for you. And shockingly, it didn't work. You know, it didn't. Like, people bought really expensive bike treadmills, and now they sit at their house and they do exactly what treadmills do. They hold clothes.
The easiest way for me to determine and know that would be like my ability to predict that wasn't going to work was the thought of, I am a fairly motivated person that loves fitness. And if I had to work out inside of my home every single day, I wouldn't do it.
You beat me to it. Same exact thing. Like, if I don't get to the gym, I probably don't work out. I'll occasionally do something at home. And when I say occasionally, I'm talking once every couple months. And I ruck regularly outside. But like, for me to do a regular workout plan in my house, as a person who owns a fitness business and mentors other people who own fitness businesses, no chance, dude. No way. There's no way the average person is going to go from like, I'm literally not changing my surroundings, but the same place I usually eat Cheetos and watch Netflix, I'm now going to do fitness. No way. Not a chance.
I would love to see some research being done on looking at the differences. If you were to pick like three key performance indicators of fitness, and you were to look at a group that's working out at home and then another group doing the exact same workout inside of a gym environment, at the differences. So if you were to track like calorie expenditure, like heart rate and, respiratory rate, the differences between the two of those, because I think just that environmental shift in and of itself would be so much more impactful.
Yeah, without a doubt. And like, you and I both do sales consultations with leads and potential members. And the easiest way I know that someone's like lying to me is when they say I'm going to do a workout program at home. Like I know that's not true. I'm sorry. Maybe you're the 0.001% who I'm wrong about, and you're going to make significant lifestyle change. But like when I hear that, I just know, okay, you are not going to make any change. I know this now. You're not serious about this part of your life right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we say to our sales team all the time, like the best thing that you can do is help the person make an informed decision.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, it's like that's what this all boils down to. Is it's like I want you to make a real decision on your health, because this is likely most people that come into gyms for a consultation have been thinking about this for a very long time, but not doing anything about it.
Yeah, for sure. And like those people, I will much, much more happily refer them to Planet Fitness than doing something at home for that very reason. Like if they're not going to work with us, that's okay. Go to a place where you have to have some kind of financial commitment and you have to have some kind of environmental shift, because you're not going to make change, or you would have done it already. You would have never come in here.
Yeah. Now we've seen there's been quite a shift over the years from personal training to like, very large groups to now like groups plus semi-private to more of a hybrid model. Where do you see from like an operational side and business models perspective, where do you see things going over the next 10 years?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like I think you're seeing a lot of people in our space become much more financially successful operating like a small group model. I think that's kind of the big trend right now, or at least it's the beginning of the big trend. It may not be super popular, but I know inside of Two Brain it's becoming very popular. I think that's always going to compete with the idea of the general population looking at fitness as like a commodity. The fact that Planet Fitness exists and the 50,000 brands who have copied Planet Fitness is that they're price anchoring in the opposite way at a very low price point. So if you are a gym, you are always competing with that. Whether your service is anything like that, you're going to have to compete with that, because they have inundated the market with gyms cost between $9 and $35 a month. Now you and I both know, and many people I'm sure listening to this know, that our gyms are nothing like Planet Fitness. And I'm not even saying that they're necessarily better, although I obviously think they are. I'm just saying that they are literally not the same thing at all.
Right.
But because of that, we will always have to deal with a smaller, or I guess I would say lower price point than is probably appropriate. Like imagine you go to something every single day for a month. You should probably pay more than $100 for that. You're getting significantly more ROI on that. Whatever. I'm not going to get to that point. The idea is, because of that, I think larger groups are probably going to have to always continue to exist, because there will need to be a lower, a comparably lower price point than to like a small group training or personal training style program. So I think what we'll see is continued shift in the smaller size of groups, but there'll still be groups around.
Yeah, I think ultimately we're playing this game of trying to maintain a level of fun and effectiveness.
Yeah, for sure.
And the ways in which we make that happen, I think it depends on how the individual defines them, right? So like what one person finds fun for their fitness may not be what the other person does, and how one person defines effectiveness may not be what the other person does. So for example, like I have people that come to my gym and they don't have any sort of like astronomical fitness goal, but effectiveness for them is they leave feeling better than they came, right? Whereas I have people that have very specific, very upper echelon fitness and performance-based goals that they give their soul to accomplish, right? So their definitions of effectiveness can change a lot. And fun for that person is coming in and like going as hard as they can on every single workout. But I think that what we can do is create an identity with our gyms to attract one or both of those people, depending on how you run your gym. And whether that be whether that be best accomplished in a small group, whether it be best accomplished in a large group, or best accomplished one-on-one, I think is just to be determined by the market and the gym owners.
Yeah, I just wish that I wish people would take a little more control over their own goals here. You know, I mean, I'm just talking about like human psychology in general. Like, I wish people would say like, "Hey, I want this thing, therefore I recognize that I may have to sacrifice something to achieve this thing." Maybe that something is some of my time, some of my money, some of my ability to do X or Y because of the return I'll get for doing that. And if the general population would do that more, I think they'd both see better results and be happier. But we're talking about very deep psychology at that point that we don't have the ability to shift in any way.
Yeah. Well, Nick, I know we can keep going here, but we are an hour and 5 in.
Sweet.
I really appreciate you getting on the podcast. I knew this was going to be an awesome conversation. I would definitely love to have you on again. Tell the listeners where they can learn more about you.
Yeah, thanks, man. You can find me on Instagram at Nick Habich. You can check out my gyms at sharkbite.fit. If you want to check out the Sharks, we're in the playoffs. Check out at SWFL Sharks on Instagram. We got websites all at the same names too, but I know that everybody uses social media at this point, so just check us out there.
Fantastic. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on.